Coming in for another episode of Consciousness and Stuff. That's the working title of these Friday conversations that I'm sharing with you. And as is the case, I like to reflect, share the reflections that I have over the course of the week. And also, sometimes I'll have a guest. And I had Garrett Kramer as kind of a guest or a co person, a human, in conversation earlier this week on Tuesday. We covered some good stuff. Uh, I'm always open to feedback, how these conversations are landing. Of course, these kind of monologues with just me and myself and I and you, as well as these dialogues that I have with Garrett. And like I said, it's just an exploration and a sharing of what is happening in my realm of awareness as the week goes on. And as time goes on, I feel less and less, not there was ever really much of it, but I feel less and less hesitance to share what's on my heart. But there was some hesitance. I must say that there were months where I felt like it was just best to keep my mouth zipped and not share what I was thinking, what I was seeing, what I was hearing, what I was feeling. And now I feel like it's really important that I share what I think and feel and hear and see. And I also encourage you to share in whatever way feels good, what you think, hear, feel, see. And you can do that. It doesn't have to be like a live stream, but do it with someone who you know and trust, and air out the feelings, have the conversations, especially and even when they're difficult. Once we kind of break the ice and once we move the ball, so to speak, it's helpful to shift the energy and to also help us in shifting our perspective by simply voicing what is in our hearts and on our minds, and hearing that and allowing others kind of to hear it and respond. And obviously, we want to do our best to kind of disengage emotionally, so to speak, if that's ever possible. I don't think it's really ever completely possible because we are human beings, multidimensional in nature, and we have an emotional, energetic self that is programmed in a way. And sometimes conversations in life get sticky because we are emotional beings. But as we cultivate and kind of allow ourselves to become more aware of our emotional tendencies, our tendencies to get and feel triggered or reactive or defensive or aggressive or shy or withdrawn, the more we bring awareness to these tendencies, the more we see that, hey, it's just kind of silly. It's just kind of this kind of mask or facade that I put on. And the consciousness, the awareness, the human being, the multidimensional being, beyond that is so much more. We have these moments, and it's okay. So let's bring some self-compassion. But what I wanted to kind of focus on today, if it is possible to focus, I'm never quite sure if it is possible to focus, but let's see if we can. I wanted to focus on brain cleansing, and there might be a better word for it, but that's the word that came to mind for me as I was kind of thinking about pressing the live button today. And by brain cleansing, I'm really talking about like the antidote to brainwashing. I'm talking about like the cleansing, the purification, the stripping of the imprints that we are all susceptible to by the programming of our society. And that programming can feel like and look like brainwashing. And like I said, we are all susceptible to it. We are. And I think it's helpful to point that out and to become aware of the fact that everything, whether there's intent behind it or not, everything is quote unquote brainwashing us. Everything is having an impact on our programming, on our thoughts, on the way that we interpret reality, on our belief system. And the more that we can become aware of the subtle impacts that our media, that our relationships, that our the radio, that the music, that the movies, that the TV, that the commercials, the billboards, the more we can become aware of the kind of messages that are really slamming us in the face every waking moment almost, unless we're off the grid, so to speak, in a cave, detached and removed from society, which, let's face it, it can be nice to remove oneself from society, but I think that it's important to be a part of society and help society to evolve and exist and thrive in a healthy direction. So for that reason, I think it's important to have a good understanding of the potential, once again, or the reality, because it's not really a potential, it's happening. The reality of the extent to which and the degree to which our brains are washed. And brainwashing, it sounds like kind of a cool thing, like, oh, we get to like wash the brain and it's nice and clean. But brainwashing isn't really washing the brain, it's programming the brain. It's putting things in sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle ways that are literally creating and manipulating the way that we view ourselves in the world and the way that we view others in the world with ourselves and the way that we view the world as it is. So it's our perspective in the moment, unless we are completely falling away from our thinking and in the true spiritual now, we are allowing the programming to rule and ultimately to create the world that we are creating for ourselves. So we are creating our world through the state of mind that we hold in the moment. And we can be in a pure state of quote unquote mindfulness or meditative state, or in a state of peace, in a state of pure awareness. I don't think it's really anything realistic or reasonable to strive to be in a state of pure awareness or mindfulness all the time. The reality is that we are going to be in a state of kind of autopilot, or on a state of just kind of our humanity is going to be predominant. And when it is, we are subject to the imprinting or the programming of the brainwashing that we are exposed to every waking moment of life. So what do we do about this? Well, one thing that was really an interesting kind of exercise or thought process that Garrett brought up on Tuesday was turning everything upside down. I forget the exact quote, but essentially relating to the world like we're in backwards day. I remember backwards day in third grade, where you put your shirt on backwards and you walked around backwards and you like put your glasses on the back of your head, and and it's like upside down is right side up and inside out is outside in, and we're backwards. And when we do that, or when we kind of, what hit me was when we kind of allow ourselves to just see like, oh my gosh, like, obviously I'm not coming up with any sort of example because I'm trying to, but when we allow ourselves to see that maybe everything that we know is completely opposite of what is actually happening, like maybe this is just a mental exercise. Maybe the painkillers that we are prescribed and take to relieve pain are in some way creating more pain. Once again, mental exercise. I'm not saying one is true or the other, but maybe the fertilizer we put on the ground to grow plants is actually making the land less fertile. Once again, not saying it's true one way or the other. Maybe washing our bodies with soap is actually making us dirtier. Once again, I'm not saying one thing is true or the other is, but as we allow ourselves to break free from the immediate knowing of something and just get curious about the infinite possibilities of what might be, then we can be more curious and less vulnerable to the imminent brainwashing that is happening around the clock. Because I hear a lot of people say oh, I don't watch the news, so I don't really know what's going on in the world. And neither do I. I don't watch the news. Don't have a TV. I don't watch the news, so I don't know what's going on in the world. I'm kind of tuned out. I know that, Joe Biden's president. I know that Trump's out of the office now. I know that we're still in a pandemic, whatever that means. I know that there's this new vaccine, but I don't really know what's happening. I hear people kind of in some way or another talk about how they're a little removed from what's happening. And that's fine. But the reality is they're actually not removed from what's happening. The propaganda is still, sorry, I didn't mean to use the word propaganda. The news or the media or the information is still permeating through however many layers of people or sources, and it's still making its way to the far reaches of society, even if the far reaches of society are not scrolling Facebook or watching CNN or listening to the radio, even if the far reaches of society are just walking down the street and they see a billboard or they hear people talking, or they see the headlines on a newspaper article that's in the storefront. Everyone is being bombarded with something that is definitely making its way into what we believe to be real and true. So it's crazy to think about. We don't, even if we try, even if we were to intentionally do our best to once again disengage, and I think the best way that we would be able to execute this is to totally go on a backpacking trip or something and just hike out into the woods, because when you cross paths with the bear or the deer or the squirrels, they're not going to be telling you what's going on. But if you're even on the edge of society, you're still we're all still going to be subject to the imprinting and the brainwashing once again, for better or for worse. Sometimes there's good things that are permeating into our belief system. But I think that it's probably we're in consensus that more often than not, what is actually propagated and making its way into the collective belief system by means of this bombardment in all sources and media outlets and print and social media and radio and everything, it's actually not constructive. It's not the truth in the sense that it's not pointing to the fundamental universal truth. It's creating divisiveness, division, just by nature of neglecting to point at or acknowledge the shared nature of consciousness and the shared nature of our collective. Just by nature of that, for example, this is just what's came up for me. Like, even if we turn on the even if, listen to the radio, I'm trying to listen to music, but of course there's going to be like, in the impeachment trial, the Trump legal team, the Republican senators, blah, 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 blah. Like, just talking about, quote unquote, them is creating divisiveness. It is. It might not be it might not inherently be like a bad thing. It's not like they're bad. But even when we say even when we say they are doing this, we're doing this, they think this, we think this, they believe that we should do this, we believe that we should not do that. Even that sort of conversation, as benign as it may be, is always propagating divisiveness. It's always continuing to splinter and fragment society. Even if it's not intentional, even if it's or even if there's a good intent, the nature of that conversation will do nothing other than just make people believe the lie that there are two sides to the story. And what if, once again, we're brain cleansing here? We're allowing our programming to just kind of fall away for a moment, stepping into the infinite possibilities of a present moment. What if there wasn't two sides? Like, what if there actually weren't two sides? What if they were like two groups of people who were caught up in like a belief system, but these groups of people were actually the same? What if, for example, like, what if there were twins that were separated from birth, and this twin led this life, and that twin led that life, and this twin got, indoctrinated into this belief system, this twin got indoctrinated into this belief system, and then they like reunited and kind of clashed and butt heads, and then they realized, oh, we came from the same egg. We share genetic material. We lived in the same uterus for 9 months. Like, every once in a while, I have that sort of moment where I see someone who, from my humanness, because I've got a belief system too. I'm not free from the imprinting. I'm not free from the propaganda. I'm not free from belief system. But every once in a while, I'll see someone out there. I'll see them. I'll see the other. I'll see they, and they having a different belief system. They being really, adamant about what they know and how they know it and what's true and what's right and what's wrong. And I'll just, like, every once in a while, it doesn't happen that often, but I'm open to it happening more. I see that innocent me. I see that innocent reflection of the same consciousness of myself. And it's like, wow, that is me. And obviously it's not literally me, but it's my twin. It's obviously not literally my twin. We might not share the same exact genetic code, and we might not have been roommates in the same uterus for 9 months, but we are cut from the same cloth. We're waves in the same ocean. And when I allow that remembrance to take place, there's just like a disengaged, a disarming, and whatever sort of riling up I might have felt is completely replaced with feelings of, not overwhelming, maybe it's just like bubbling up very subtly, but feelings of compassion, feelings of a shared oneness, a shared human consciousness, interconnectedness. Because that's the truth, is we are shared oneness, we are interconnected. And once again, you don't have to get into the nitty gritty physics of how this is in fact the truth, but we all know, and we've all been told, and we all in our hearts very much know that all human beings are brothers and sisters, regardless of our shape and size and texture and color. Like, we're all brothers and sisters. And then the dogs and cats and bears and deer and squirrels and lizards and earthworms and bacteria and viruses, they're just our cousins. They're just our earthlings. Like, wow. Well, is it not amazing how much time, energy, resources, etc. are wasted, are completely dumped down the toilet at perpetuating this lie that we are separate, this lie that they should be different or we should be different, or like, holy cow. Talk about saving some time, energy, and money. If we can let that shit go and actually focus on the truth and cooperate and collaborate and get past our immature emotional reactions as if we're, in kindergarten trying to share a toy. Like, holy cow. I would say that for the most part, kindergartners are much more mature than much of humanity right now. But that's not to say that we have our moments. The adult collective humanity, we have our moments of aha, our insights, our wake up moments where we remember. And then we fall back into forgetting and allowing, once again, the imprinting, the bombarding of propaganda. I will call it propaganda. I will call it propaganda because this is a belief, and maybe I've been imprinted with this belief, but I'm going to share it. This is a belief. I don't know who or what is at the core of it, but I do honestly, truly feel that there is forces that be beyond the vast majority of the collective humanity. There are forces that be, whether they are human forces, whether they are extraterrestrial forces, whether they are spiritual forces, whether they are shadow forces, whatever it is, there are forces that be that are there intentionally to create and perpetrate divisiveness. And it is up to us, up to our true spiritual nature, up to our hearts knowing, to see through that and not allow the forces that be to create the future that we don't want. Because humanity doesn't want continued fragmentation. We don't. Maybe it's just like yin and yang, right? Maybe it's just darkness and light. Maybe it is just kind of our shared collective shadow that is in strife with the light. Or maybe it is a cabal of corruption in humanity that is the manifestation of the collective shadow. But in any case, it's up to us. It's up to us as individuals to see through that, to see through the lies, to step beyond and free ourselves from the perpetual brainwashing, and focus on the truth, live in the truth. And once again, I think what that looks like is just questioning everything, questioning absolutely everything. You know, down the road, we live in a small town here in Colorado, and sometimes we walk by the grocery store. It's a city market, which I think is like Kroger. So it's kind of like a big chain. And all outside of the city market, there's signs that say free flu shot. Well, first of all, I thought that the flu didn't exist this year because COVID cured it. Honestly, I saw something that's like flu is down 98% this year. And I think we know why. Because flu is diagnosed as COVID now. That's my understanding, at least. But anyways, back to my point. Like there are signs that say free flu shot, and why? Why is it free? Why is it free? Why does medicine need to be marketed? Why does health need to be marketed? Like, you know, once again, this is not my this is not my direct criticism of the pharmaceutical company or the powers that be or anything like that. It's staying curious. I'm not saying that it's bad. Maybe the flu shot is in fact the life-saving, miraculous thing that humanity needs. But if we continuing to ask questions and continuing to think critically for oneself is the antidote to the collective imprinting that ultimately leads to continued divisiveness and continued belief in the lies that are not allowing humanity to evolve in the brightest, healthiest direction that we're capable of. So yeah, it's funny. I heard someone bring up the fact that like it was someone who was like, someone called me a CT, and I thought, oh, that means that I'm a critical thinker. Yeah, I am a CT. But then it was like, no, CT is a conspiracy theorist, just want to. So to me, it's kind of the same. To me, a conspiracy theorist is a critical thinker. And maybe a critical thinker isn't always a conspiracy theorist, but in our world today, that label can result. And obviously, that label is dismissive. It's not inclusive. It's once again another way of singling out or dividing this false narrative that people who believe something are way over there, and there's like these 2 sides or 3 sides or 9 sides or 25 sides. And the fact is that there's 8 billion sides to every story. So a CT, a critical thinker, or a conspiracy theorist, or anyone else who might be poo-pooed or dismissed, is not marginalized. They're just a human being with a perspective. And I ultimately what I'm trying to say here is that I think it's in our best interests if we're all CTs. If we want to call it a conspiracy theorist, that's fine. I think critical thinker sounds and feels better. And critical means that we're being critical. We're criticizing. And that's good. That's healthy. Anything that comes our way, we should criticize it. And that doesn't mean like bash it and beat it and hate it and make it wrong. But that means like critique, right? Critique. Check it out from all angles. How does it look over here? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? Be a critic, a critique. Critique everything. Think critically. That is not wrong or bad or anti-science, quote unquote. That is actually the most scientific and rational and humane way that we can live and exist and evolve. Recognizing that we are all CTs, we're all critical thinkers, and as such, there are 8 billion different perspectives on any single topic, any single happening physically in the world. There are 8 billion ways to look at it and describe it and to smell it and to feel it and to taste it. There's 8 billion perspectives. So if we can listen to each other, if we can see how that person's seeing it and thinking about it and feeling it, and get curious and have a conversation and collaborate rather than shut the door on them and censor them and silence them, then maybe we can create a actual shared unified understanding. That feels good. That feels hopeful to me. It does. And speaking of that, like the whole censoring thing, like that, holy cow. Like I'm curious if anyone actually feels like censoring keeps you safe. If when you learn about people being censored, whether it's Donald Trump on Twitter or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Instagram or myself censored on Facebook for 24 hours or even like someone who's an actual terrorist. If you censor a terrorist, to me, that does not make me feel safer. That makes me feel like the terrorists just got suppressed. The terrorists just got silenced. The terrorists just got pushed, rejected. And that, whatever forces and beliefs and expression that terrorist wants to make heard in the world, it's just going to come out louder in a different way, right? It's like whack-a-mole. If we whack something down, it's just going to pop up somewhere else, but it's probably going to pop up in a way that we really don't want it to, right? Because it doesn't feel good to be told that you need to shut up. It doesn't. I was told that just yesterday. And even though I felt and knew I was completely innocent, I think most people who are censored feel as if they are completely innocent because we're just being ourselves, sharing our unique kind of 1 in 8 billion perspective of things in a moment. But when I get that feedback, when I'm told that I need to shut up, that doesn't make me want to shut up. Maybe there's some people who do want to shut up when they're told to shut up. But when I'm told to shut up, I kind of want to yell a little bit louder. I kind of want to make myself heard a little bit more. So I really know that I'm not alone there. Like I said, maybe some people do actually censor themselves when they're told to censor themselves. But more often than not, the things, the energies, the voices, the content, the message is heard or expressed in ways that maybe are not the healthiest or the most constructive or the most peaceful. So I, if I needed to say it, censoring, the censorship thing, telling people like, oh, only this, only that, I'll select, I'll fact check, I'll make sure it fits inside of what we want to, put out in the world, right? Once again, a way that we're brainwashed. Everything has to fit into the thing before it goes out in the world, right? So how can we cleanse ourselves? How can we cleanse the brain from the programming or the imprinting? We can think critically. We can think for ourselves, and we can recognize the innate intelligence and the humanness in any other perspective, and we can see through the lies and focus on the shared consciousness, the shared being that we all are. And I think that'll take us a long way. So I guess that's kind of about wrapping up my rant for today. So feel free to share any feedback that you have, any comments, how this lands. And if you feel like, oh, maybe my sister or uncle or cousin or neighbor should hear this, you can share it with them. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being you. Thanks for being open-minded, and thanks for being a CT, a critical thinker. And I really do appreciate you and acknowledge you. And I look forward to the collective shared expansion and growing that we're continuing to experience. I think it's going to end out all right. That's my hope for today. And sending you guys lots of peace and love. Have a wonderful weekend.